Coming up on the CHGO Cubs Podcast, King of the Cubs. How about a Trade Talk Tuesday? Can the Cubs pull off another deal for another big arm? Plus, Presley's official, and we present our very critical list of the best left fielders in the National League. Like it, love it, maybe even hate it. Doesn't matter. We're coming up next. Hey, Chicago, what do you say? It's the CHGO Cubs Podcast, a show fit for a king. Luke Stuckmeyer, Cody Delmendo. It is Tuesday, January 28th, and that means we are 12 days away from when pitchers and catchers have to be at Sloan Park in Arizona. We're down to a dozen, Cody. That's right, they're all fine. But the official work gets down to business. 12 days.
We didn't talk about this yesterday, but Nico Horner taking ground balls out in Mesa. Shout out to our guy Rich Biesterfield.
Didn't look like he had a brace on his arm for what I could tell by the picture. He
was literally out there like in regular gear.
Looked like normal, right?
Yeah. So, shout out to Rich for letting us use those photos.
Rich is the best. Yeah. He's always there getting the pics, evaluating, doing his thing. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk, like I said, I'm calling today Trade Tuesday. Why not? Let's make a deal. How about let's make a deal Tuesday? Either way.
What was the first one? What did you call it?
Trade Talk Tuesday.
Trade Talk. I like that better.
Trade Talk Tuesday. Whatever. We're going to talk about the possibility of the Cubs adding another arm. Maybe Michael King is the latest one that's being dangled out there by the Padres, a guy who was great last year. We'll get to that in a second. We're also going to have our big list starting today, left fielders. Our list of the best left fielders just in the National League. It'll be controversial. Some of you will hate it. Some of you will love it. And some of you will proclaim that it's the best list you've ever seen.
Probably. In my head, it's the best list
It's the best list you've ever seen.
We stuck to National League mainly because we're a National League team.
Yeah, and everybody puts out in baseball. But, I'm not worried about too many American League teams.
I mean, we don't really care. Even though I guess we should since we're playing every team now. But anyway. Maybe that's our unique way of doing it, since all the other lists are like in baseball. Ours are just National League.
Ours are just National League.
Yeah.
Maybe we could just do in the Midwest. Best left fielders in the Midwest.
Depending on what you
count for
this is what we define as the Midwest.
Well, and our guy Jim Cook thinks Dallas is in the Midwest, so it would be probably difficult in the whole episode just to figure out what's in the Midwest before you guys even get to the
That's
players.
right.
I would not consider Dallas a Midwest.
Minnesota, Midwest?
No.
Yes.
Yeah, Minnesota is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's middle.
Houston?
No, it's too south.
That's what but they don't want to be called the South.
But they are.
But too bad, you're the Southwest.
They're in the Central Time Zone.
It's fair.
Best
care.
left fielders in our time zone.
So you're saying with Minnesota, bringing up Minnesota, they're too north?
Well, a lot of times when people talk about, realignment, you think that potentially Houston and the Rangers could be thrown into that mix. Sometimes. Whatever.
Anyway, we see all the lists out there. That's why we decided to do them. We're like, let's do our own.
We've seen some lists. Most of them stink.
Yeah. So now let's make our own list that everyone thinks is going to
let everybody yell at us. So the deal that was thrown out, Ken Rosenthal put it out there a little bit that the Padres are taking offers, shopping Michael King, who was a Cy Young finalist for the Padres. He was a reliever, a really good one for the Yankees, then included in the Juan Soto deal, right? And became a starter last year and was spectacular for the Padres, like really, really good. We'll talk about some of the things that made him good. I don't know what it would take to give him up. I saw our guy, Gary Ross, who's in the live YouTube chat already. Best way to enjoy the experience is, of course, the live YouTube chat because you can be a part of it. Gary was saying, I believe, Casey, Assad, and Alcantara is what he was thinking the deal should propose deal. I'm just going to say this. It's a lot for a 1-year rental. We can get into that. If you sign the guy that's different, was he really good last year? Yes. Does he provide you something that a lot of your guys in the rotation do not? Yes. 201 strikeouts, right?
Yeah.
Almost 10.5 per 9 innings. Like he could strike some guys out. So in that way, he would be obviously a huge boost to the rotation.
Yeah. 2.95 earned run average last year. Expected 3.59 ERA, whatever. Not too big of a difference. I think the big thing for me on why it's a 1-year rental and I'm willing to go into it is the fact that he was healthy. Pitched 173 innings. He got some postseason experience. He pitched well in the postseason last year. Will be 30 this year. Turns 30 on May 25th. But yeah, I mean, he used to be a reliever. Last year was his first real full season being a starter.
Credit to the Padres, that worked out.
Well, he was part of the Juan Soto trade.
Yeah.
And he was probably the biggest piece that came back in that trade. Now, Padres are in a very weird situation because obviously we've talked about them a ton in the past about how, they're a mid-market team, but they've been giving out these massive contracts, this and that, but their owner passed. And I didn't know how much it was really going to affect them this offseason, but if you want to rank disappointing off seasons, I think you got to put the Padres near the top of the list in like most disappointing off seasons to this point. They have done nothing except be part of the rumor mill of we need to shred salary.
And they have handed out some monster deals, right? Yeah. And they have acquired some huge players over the last couple of years. And we kept sitting on the couch over there watching games saying, how are the Padres really a mid-market team? How are they doing this? Well, eventually it's time you got to pay the piper. And there's a lot of money to go out there, and they went all in trying to kind of get this championship, and they couldn't beat the Dodgers. And now you're looking at it saying, well, we better take a step back and sort of regroup, and some of those names are coming off the list, guys that are obviously really good players, because Cease or King, who would you rather have?
It's the same situation. I guess Cease, just because you have more of a sample size of him being a starter. But
costs you a little bit more, right?
I believe he'll cost more, and also his agent is Boris, and we just know how that goes as Cubs fans. So I think Michael King is the type of guy that maybe you could get a contract extension done during the season if the Cubs are really interested, and it's not going to cost you some massive deal because, again, one season of being a starter, I don't want to say it's like Jack Flaherty, because Jack Flaherty's thing is injuries and the hot and cold of is he good or is he bad? Which one are you going to get from him? King, even as a reliever, or as a swingman in 2023 with the Yankees, put up really good numbers. So it's not like he's just been good for one season. He's been good over the course of time. It's just last season the Padres used him as a starter, and he was awesome. So I think when you look at King's situation, it's a lot different from Cease outside of the fact that it's just a 1-year rental type deal. But I think you could get a contract extension done with King in season or before the season, whatever. That's a lot more likely than it is with Dylan Cease, who you will absolutely be going to, free agency and try, if you want to bring him back for 2026, that's definitely something that will happen. So that's the difference between the two. I think that's pretty realistic outlook, right?
If it's let's just play the hypothetical. Like if it is one of those guys, Casey or Alcantara and Assad. The Assad part doesn't bother me because you're adding another starting pitcher. That seems reasonable to give them a guy that's under control, could be good for them, and still not cost them as much money. Although right now they're likely headed to arbitration with King. He wants 8.8. The Padres offered 7.3. But even if you went high end, he's like $5 million cheaper than Cease this season.
Mhm.
I don't know which way the Cubs are going with the outfield thing. I don't. We've talked about it. Alcantara may have the highest ceiling. Owen Casey didn't make the top 100 list for somebody yesterday, but he is rumored by many to have the most power of the group and might be closer than Alcantara is to reaching the majors.
But he's still mostly on a lot of top 100
and
lists.
he's still a prospect. They're both still prospects. And if you were to somehow keep Kyle Tucker, you wouldn't need Owen Casey necessarily on your team next season. So you'd be trading a guy that you do have a way to replace him. It's to pay the money to Tucker.
Yeah.
And then you'd be adding a frontline guy. It's whether or not you want to do those two things. I don't know about Cease versus King. You're right. Cease has I'd be more excited because he has a way bigger resume for doing that.
But I really don't think they're talking to the Padres about Cease. I really think that they're talking to the Padres about
No, I'm
King.
just saying, like, the Padres are clearly listening to offers on two really good pitchers.
Yeah.
Two guys that could be in Cy Young conversations, two guys that could go right to the top of your rotation and be your number one next year. I saw this stat. I think it was MLB Network. They had 4 players last year that had a sub-3 ERA and 200 or more strikeouts. Chris Sale, Skubal with the Tigers, Wheeler with the Phillies, King with the Padres. I mean, you're talking about the guy that won the Cy Young, and the other two guys on most people's rankings would be 1 or 2 in Major League Baseball for starters.
I want to jump in just because of the Cease King talk. I understand, obviously that's an impressive number there, sub-3 ERA, 200 strikeouts. Cease has pitched in 32-plus games in 4 of the past seasons. Yeah. I think that is a way better target for the Cubs because King, especially guys that have gone from 50 to 100 to 170 innings pitched, that's just a ton of workload. Cease is more of a guarantee that you'll get a great year. He is very consistent. I know his ERA has bounced up a little bit. He had that year with the Sox where he was second in Cy Young with the 2.20 ERA. Last year, he was 4th in Cy Young with the 3.50 ERA, but it seems like he's gotten his control down, and it seems like he's just a growing and more well-shapen starting pitcher. So if you're going to be giving up prospects, I would just go all in and go for Cease if I was the Cubs.
Sean running the 1s and 2s, and hold on one second, Cody. I was going to say, if you're just comparing apples to apples, the player itself, I would rather have Cease. However, as Cody pointed out, one might be easier to get a deal done than the other. One will cost you less this season in not going over the luxury tax, just for what you would pay the player for one season. And he also would likely cost you less in prospects that you're sending out. So there are positives to going the cheaper route. If you're just trying to have the better pitcher, I'm with Sean 100%. Yeah, I'd rather have Dylan Cease.
I agree that the higher ceiling is with Dylan Cease. Just based off the fact that he's done more, he's proven more over the last handful of years. He's been the top guy on both the White Sox and the Padres rotation, right? So, there's certainly a higher ceiling with Dylan Cease. I just not sure if the Cubs would be able to keep him long term, and I'm just not personally. I don't really want to give away Alcantara or Casey, or if they're interested in Triantos. I'm not even interested in moving any of those 3 for 1 year Cease when I feel like you're more likely to be able to get a contract extension done with King, who's solid, and I think makes that top 3 in the rotation a lot better. And I would feel a lot better about the Cubs in 25 and beyond. Now, the risk, of course, is just the fact that it's 1 year of what he's done.
Right.
He's had a solid career as a reliever, swingman in 23. First year as a starter last season was awesome, 173 innings, as we said. Basically a 3 ERA, right? If you have that with Justin Steele and Shota Imanaga, I feel like you can feel really confident in a wild card series, 5-game NLDS, even, we can talk about NLCS if you want to just dream about it, whatever. I feel like those guys will give you a chance to win. So, yeah, I'd feel differently if I felt more confident in how the Cubs are operating. I guess that's my That's my answer to Sean. It's like, if I felt better about how the Cubs were operating, yes.
Carter Hawkins and
like
live
spending
YouTube.
more. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, either way, it's a free agent pitcher, and they have to sign either guy if they trade for him.
I don't think that King is going to be nearly as hard to bring back.
Yeah, but is he as good? Like Cease, you've had 4 years of
it's not
like,
just
true
about the talent
experience.
Fake Carter Hawkins in the YouTube chat has the trade value from Baseball Trade Values. He says Cease 33.3, King 27.7 for what it's worth.
Yeah, no,
okay.
I agree. Cease is better, and he's done more for sure. I just don't like. We have enough experience of going through with Jed and Scott Boras, and it's a headache.
To me, it's about the rentals, which we will get into in a second when we talk about the Presley deal being official and some of the other stuff the Cubs have done. But first, I want to tell you about some of our great partners here at CHGO. I've got a New Year's resolution, Cody, and I've told you this. Joe Madden used to say, try not to suck. I'm here to say, try not to stink in 2025. Let's face it. Chicago sports, they stink right now, but you don't have to. One thing I'm definitely bringing with me into 2025 is that Mando whole body deodorant. I like the bourbon leather scent. It's safe to use anywhere on your body. 12 hours after a shower, the average man's Grundle odor level is a 5 out of 10. But with Mando, the average Grundle odor level is 0 out of 10. Mando starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with the solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like the mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And as a special offer to our listeners, new customers can get $5 off the starter pack with our exclusive code CHGO. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. So use the code CHGO at shopmando.com. That's SHOP. SHOP. I said SHOPMANDO.com. Please support our show. Tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando, and try not to stink in 25. Like I just did on that read.
Remember how I went to Olive Garden on Sunday?
Oh, and I dreamed about those breadsticks that night.
Oh, man, there's still a couple in my fridge. But I went to the one out in Schaumburg, and
Great
I went
location.
I went in like the late afternoon on Sunday. So the sun was to the west, and so it was so bright. And I don't know if I would have made it if I didn't have my Shady Rays.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for your outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it, Luke. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by lost or broken replacements. If you don't love your shades, exchange for a new pair or return worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with personal and fast support. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code CHGO for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Now, before we move on to, I think you wanted to talk about Presley next.
Well, I wanted to mention Bob Loblaw says he never heard the word Grundle until this ad confirmed real word. I believe it's a slang the kids tell me for the perineum.
Really?
Yeah.
This is
the area between the genitalia and the sphincter.
I was today years old when I learned this. So
me too. I just Googled it.
I get to, I guess, continue on the King talk or to close the King talk, whatever you want to do. The proposed trade that's being thrown out there that I've heard or read about, Assad and or plus KC or Alcantara, and then
another one more,
and then like whether it's a prospect or maybe a major league player.
MLB
of
Network
a lower
said
tier.
Could be 5 players, and I was like, okay, let's slow our roll for one year of somebody.
Players.
Unless some of these other big teams that lost out on certain guys are like, okay, we're getting in the mix for it.
For the proposed trade that's out there, like I'm here for it. Like I don't know where Alcantara is going to play in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm going into this season, and I understand that this is setting yourself up to be hurt, but I'm going into this season with the idea that the Cubs are going to extend Kyle Tucker. That, like, you don't make a trade like that and let him walk after 1 year if you're a serious organization. If you really want to be what Tom Ricketts and Jed Hoyer are saying and all this, like, I'm going into this season believing that they are going to do whatever it takes to keep Kyle Tucker a Cub beyond 2025. All right. So, with that said, you have to move one of those guys. I think the Padres are probably higher on Casey since he used to be a Padre as part of the Yu Darvish trade. So, fine, whatever. I don't really care either one of them. I really don't. Go flip a coin for one of them. I really don't care.
If you're keeping Tucker, it doesn't matter to me.
I would prefer to keep Casey since he is a left-handed bat. And I think I don't know if he has a higher ceiling than Alcantara, but I think the likelihood of him panning out to be a solid major league player is higher than Alcantara. So whatever. That, to me, Assad, Casey, and if you whatever the other players, whether it's a guy in your top 30 that's probably out from from 15 to 30, somewhere in that range in terms of ranking, fine. That's fine with me. Like, for a guy like King, that would significantly make your rotation better. Undoubtedly. Plus, you'd still have all that depth. They could go 6-man rotation if they wanted to. I said you want to move Assad. I clearly have supported Assad a lot on the show. I think Colin Ray is just another version of him. He's older, but I just feel like he's another version of him. So if Colin Ray is taking over Javier Assad's spot, fine. I just think that they have enough depth in that pitching staff where they can lose Assad and send someone outside their top 15 in their top 30 and sending one of their top 100s in Casey or Alcantara and get a deal done for a guy like King who's 29, going to be 30 next year, but is coming off a really good season. I think he brings something to that rotation that they desperately need, which is more whiffs.
To expand on the prospect talk, Keith Law did have 4 Cubs in his top 100. Right. Matt Shaw was 14th. Kevin Alcantara, 33rd. Moises was 46th. 74th was Cade Horton. Obviously no Casey at all. But Keith Law also said the 2024 draft was not very good, but the minors right now, the minors are not very good. It's not very deep, and getting 100 names I felt good about was as hard as it's ever been. Yeah. So at least for Casey, I don't know if that's a huge stamp of endorsement from Keith Law and the industry, even Colson Montgomery on the Sox side, that, this might be even, a top 100 prospect out of a very thin minor league baseball. This might be the exact point where teams should be unloading some of their prospects because it does seem so hit or miss. I mean, Zaire Hope, after 1 year, jumped all the way to a top 50 prospect when he seemed pretty, unknown in the Cubs organization.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot to talk about it yesterday, that Law had said that. And it's not just that it was a bad draft and that the minors are bad. The minors are bad because of the contraction a little bit and the way things have gone on in Major League Baseball over the years. Right now, maybe isn't the best way to evaluate 100 players. People are trying to, he mentioned it was hard to put out a list of 100. So if you're not making the 100 list, where are people actually valuing it? And it doesn't mean that player's not going to have success in the major leagues because you just don't know. I am curious, though. To me, the bigger question right now is, how do you value a 1-year deal? Are the Dodgers and other teams ahead of you so good, specifically the Dodgers, so good that it's not worth giving up guys, prospects, good or not, for a 1-year rental? Like, how many of those 1-year rentals do you want to have to get the good feeling of competing in 2025, but then may not have any of them or the prospects that you dealt in 2026, right? Like, that's the line the Cubs appear to be walking right now. So far, they're mostly trading prospects for one. So you've got Presley, whose deal is official today.
Yeah,
he wants to close. Everybody seems to be raving about the deal on a national level. Saw Ron Darling saying this guy desperately wants to close. He's got that extra it. Like he says, his ability to slow down his heartbeat and get the tough outs has been amazing. And he notices and agrees that, yes, the strikeout numbers and things have been lower, but also he was in a different role last year in addition to getting older. So he's not necessarily the same guy, but basically said, great deal for the Cubs, okay?
Yeah.
But again, it's Tucker, Presley, now you're talking about King. How many guys are you going to stack on that one-year list and potentially have none of them in 26? How many of the good prospects, when I say good, I'm talking about guys from the top 100 and slightly beyond, how many of those do you want to risk for what very well could be 3 one-year rentals? I'm not saying it wouldn't make them better this year. Obviously, the Cubs would be way better this year if they did all 3. Would it excite me just for post-game shows? Yes. Is it best for the future of the franchise, or does it look to you like this is the way Jed is saying, I'll get that extra deal. I'll get that contract. Don't you worry about it if I don't have it already secretly under the table.
I don't think it's that.
Okay.
But Presley and Tucker, like, yeah, they're the one-year rentals, right? But you didn't give away a top 100 guy for Presley.
No.
You gave away a 20-year-old guy in low A.
That's why I would say would say great deal.
And they ate $5 million. Like,
yeah,
you're gonna pay the guy
I would say that one's a great deal.
So I get what you're saying. I'm not going to put Presley and Tucker in the same conversation of what you're saying. But how many? I mean, again, like I said, with King, I think it's possible to get a contract extension done with him because I understand the pitching market has vastly gone up in recent years. So, of course, I don't for sure know, but the difference between him and a lot of these other guys is that this guy is a late bloomer.
Mm-hmm.
And so will he want that long-term security with, like, in terms of how he wants that long-term security? What if what if you make the deal for him and he likes Chicago, he has success in Chicago, doesn't want to go to free agency, all these things. Like, I just think that there's those intangibles, those factors matter here. And I just think he's a lot different from Kyle Tucker, Dylan Cease. Like, I think he's a guy that you could find a way to get a contract extension done.
But so that is hopeful, right? Like, on our end,
yeah,
we don't know.
That's all we can do.
Right. That's all. We don't know. But the fact would be, if we take this hypothetical for fact, you could be trading Cam Smith and you could be trading Owen Casey / Alcantara plus Paredes control and those type of things.
And Hayden
Wesneski. And you could be trading those, and maybe Assad. So now you could be taking 2 of your relievers / starters, and you could be taking 2 of your top prospects from a top 100 list, and you could be trading them just to be better in 2025.
Yeah.
That's the risk of what they are potentially talking about doing. They've already done part of it, but I agree that one of the deals is.
I think if Jed was out here trying to save his job, he would have been a lot more aggressive than what we've seen. Do you think that Jed has been acting as if he needs to save his job this offseason?
No, I don't. I'm just throwing that out there. Like I say, the first 2 deals, Tucker and Presley, I'm all in on it.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm not in on a Michael King deal. I'm just throwing out the cautionary tale of,
no, I get
hey,
that.
guys, 2 times is not that risky.
Yeah.
3 times, you're starting to raise the risk level if you can't at least bring one of those guys back. And to me, you'd be trying to bring back, obviously, Tucker and or King more than you would Presley. You hope some of the young guys can take that role. But
I think with King, it's if you trade for him, you're probably thinking in the back of your head that you probably like him moving forward beyond 2025, especially if you're going to give up another one of your top 100 guys.
Agreed.
So I think that's how they're viewing it. And again, I know that the pitching market has vastly increased, but I don't see him getting $200 million or anything like that.
I want to see him win, Cody. I want to see him win in 2025, win the division. I'm just saying.
I don't even see him getting a long-term deal. I see him getting like maybe 5 years tops after 2025.
If you make these 3 deals.
No, I'm talking about King.
Okay.
If they make that trade.
If you make these 3 one-year rentals, you better sign one of them to a long-term deal, and it better be Tucker or King.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. All right, a quick word from some of our sponsors, and then we'll get to the ranking of our left fielders. Save on your new car and stick to your New Year's goals by shopping Ray's Resolution, going on all month long at Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake. Head in today to shop their huge selection of new Chevy models with their special New Year's prices. Right now, take 10 to 20% off MSRP on select new Chevy models, or shop over 125 of their vehicles that right now are priced under $20,000. As one of the top-selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest, you're always able to shop one of the Chicago area's largest Chevy inventories. So visit our partner this January, couple days left, at their location on Route 12 in Fox Lake or at raychevrolet.com. And if you've heard of Ray Chevrolet, then you certainly know about the Ray's Price Promise. That's their guarantee to make your next vehicle more affordable than ever, with no price changing, no add-ons, and no hidden fees ever. Shop great prices on new Chevys with Ray's Resolution this month by visiting Ray Chevy in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com. They've been serving the community since 1963. Together, let's drive. Don't forget, 10 to 20% off MSRP on select new Chevy models. They've got 125 vehicles priced under $20K.
Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. That makes getting tickets for events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. Luke, you mentioned at the top of the show, spring or pitchers and catchers are reporting in 12 days?
A dozen days, 12 days.
My lady's parents are going to spring training this year, like late February. I told them get their tickets on Game Time.
Or I thought you were going to say, hey, there's a room in the back seat. We'll all drive.
Listen.
Family truckster, load it up and go.
Listen. Listen. I would love to go back to Sloan Park. That was a great experience. It's one of the best spring training complexes out there, I think. But yeah, you can get your tickets to spring training games this spring on Game Time. Obviously, like I always say, whenever I get off the red line at Addison, I just pull up Game Time. You get the tickets cheaper right before first pitch. That's the beauty about Game Time compared to all the other resale sites. They're all in pricing feature is something that Luke Stuckmeyer loves because it shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. No one likes a bait and switch, my friends. No one. I don't even like a bait and switch. That's for sure. They got great seat views in the app. It's a panoramic view of your seat. So at Wrigley, there's poles. You want to avoid the pole. Don't be that person who sits behind the pole.
That's right.
When you're on Game Time, they help you out with that, right? And they have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Very nice. By the way, a couple things that I noticed over the interwebs the last 24 hours since our last show. One was Albert Almora signing that minor league deal or a tryout or invite to spring training with the Marlins.
I did not see that.
Not giving up. Not giving up.
How the mighty have fallen.
Remember whenever I think it was an invite to spring training.
Remember whenever he was on the Reds and he had like one random good game, and then he went on the radio the next day and said that
I do remember that.
And said that like the Cubs gave up on him or something like that. And
right.
He's like good now or some shit.
Well, he's a little bitter probably about the way things went, but you might not have won the World Series without Albert Almora in Game 7.
I don't think they win. I don't think they win Game 7 without Albert.
That's what I'm saying.
That's for sure.
So you probably don't win.
But yeah, if you want to criticize some Theo Epstein moves, drafting.
It wasn't a great draft pick, but it did lead to a play in Game 7 of the World Series. Like, right? He didn't end up being the player you wanted him to be, but he did deliver you one of the biggest plays in the biggest games in baseball history that led to the World Series.
Yeah.
So in that way, not a horrible draft pick.
There were moments after that season where I felt like maybe he was putting it together, but
no, you were just hoping he was going to be a star. Came out of Miami, and it was...
I don't know if I ever thought he was going to be a star.
Team USA, he had everything you wanted, the makeup, all that stuff Theo told us about. He was the guy. They were so thrilled he was there.
All I can say is that...
just didn't work out.
All I can say is that...
except for 2016.
Sure. All I can say is that PCA for sure will be better than Albert Almora. I think I can guarantee that.
Well, the good news is we will get to rank our center fielders in the National League tomorrow. We can talk about PCA. By the way, the other news thing I saw was Mallory Swanson take a personal leave of absence
Really?
From her team. So I don't know what's going on. I'm not even going to speculate. I just hope everything's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
That matters for Dansby, too. Like,
sure. Well, of course, it's his wife.
Yeah.
So one way or another, I just hope whatever it is, support that decision and hope everything's okay with the Swanson family. All right, let's get to this. So we've seen everybody make lists, and we sit here and say, well, we're dumb enough to make our own list too, right? There's a lot of jerks out there making lists. Why can't we be two jerks making another list? So that's what we're going to do. So we decided to rank left fielders in the National League. Now,
shout out to Steven for this awesome graphic.
Yeah, very fancy, right? We sat after the show yesterday and tried to start crafting our list. We know that there are people that will disagree with the list. Mm-hmm. We know that we have some reasons for why we put the list together the way it is, and people won't necessarily understand that unless they watch this segment. So if somebody tells you that list is crazy, tell them, well, you should go back to the podcast at CHGO. You can watch it on YouTube, or you can go back and podcast wherever you download your podcasts and listen to why the names are why they are the way they are, okay? So, for instance, at the top of the list, we have Christian Yelich.
Yeah. And
we were going to say this was only going to be a list of guys that qualified as left fielders last year. He didn't because of the injury.
Right.
But we believe he's the left fielder going into the season this year.
Yes.
So, listen, we fudged it. It's got to be either Yelich or Chourio is on the list.
Right.
So in this case, we just said, well, who do we think is going to be the center fielder this year? We're talking about right now. We're not talking about last year. Let's go with Yelich, because if Yelich bounces back and is healthy, which reports are he's healthy, he's the guy in left field for the Brewers. And although MLB or ESPN has him, they have Chourio still in left. But I don't know what their reasoning for that still is.
Yeah, I just think maybe they just need an update on his health status.
Potentially.
He had back surgery, so I think another reason that I don't think you mentioned was we're trying to balance between body of work and also what have you done for me lately.
Right.
And Yelich was having a great season last year before the back injury. So I think we just need to acknowledge the fact that Yelich has been who he's been over the course of time, and I think that's why we put him number one, as much as it pains me to put him there. But, I think the balance there is what's hard, and I think because we made this list ourselves, I think during the process I realized, wow, like I'm now understanding why some of the lists that we've seen from other people put out there, I don't know if they're trying to balance it like we were, but I feel like it was tough to figure out, do I take the guys who have been performing the best right now, or how much do I put in body of work? And I mean, the guy has an MVP on his resume, and he was having a great season last year before he got hurt. So I think it's controversial in a way to put Yelich there based off the injury if you're going to talk about right now. But body of work is there. He's been one of the best outfielders, left fielders in the National League for a while. There's a reason the Brewers have been making the playoffs year in and year out. Believe me, it pains me to be sitting here and saying all this.
I didn't think Corey Friedman would ever talk to us again after we put this list out. But let it be clear, our list will never be put out for clicks. We're not putting the list out for clicks. We're putting the list out for giggles. This is our list.
We're trying.
Okay?
Right? We're trying.
We're making an effort to make a list, but it is not clickbait. We're not putting Yelich instead of Chourio. We're not moving Happ to where he is because of clickbait. This is just the list, and we tried to balance, like you said, past, present, and future into what it is.
But I will say, and Yelich is the outlier for this. Like, we really did only take guys who played majority of left field.
Correct.
These are the guys who were qualified to play in left field in 2024. outside of Yelich.
Right.
So
would Schwarber be on my list? Yes, but you said no.
Because he played 5 games.
He only played 5 games in left field, so we're not going to count him as a left fielder. That would be the same way I would, if Seiya is going to play way more than that, I think, in right field this year. But if he only played 5 games in right, I would never call him a right fielder. He's a DH. Schwarber is basically a full-time DH. So to put him in left field and kind of slide him in there, it's not like saying Aaron Judge is a center fielder. Aaron Judge is a center fielder, which is why I think the list tomorrow is interesting because who knows? Maybe he starts to play a different position this year. Maybe with Soto, they move things around. Maybe they use the DH a little bit differently, and that has created a little difficulty in trying to make some of these lists at least a little bit. I saw somebody in the live YouTube chat, I didn't catch who it was, said, that's right, Matthew Gregory, listen giggles. That's what I'm talking about. Saying this is a bad position. This is a weak position. And I'm not going to disagree with that. Like overall, left field is not loaded with superstar talent in baseball. Are there really good to great players in there? If it's Churio or Yelich, yes.
Like, again, we're doing National League though. There's
correct.
A lot of really good left
it's also
in the
just
American League.
It's just the National League.
Yeah.
But there are names on this list. It's not like I get to the bottom and say, boy, I dislike that player. Pretty much any guy on this list, you look at it and I'd say, I'd be okay with that guy being the Cubs left fielder. That's how I think that there's still at least 10 good players.
I'd say the top 4 are guys that I think the top 4 stand out from everyone else. That's where I'm at with the 10 that we came up with.
Let's just go by WAR first before our list, okay? When we just looked at WAR from last year in 2024, Jurickson Profar was at the top of the list with 4.3. Yeah. So there's a guy who had this spectacular season, has really resurrected his career and become top of the list. If you want to just talk about who is the best left fielder by WAR in the National League last year, it would have been Profar with a different team, now with the Braves. So Churio would have been number 2 at 3.9. Happ would have been 3rd at 3.6, but led all qualified left fielders in defensive runs saved. Teoscar Hernandez would have been 4th at 3.5, and Brendan Donovan of the Cardinals at 3.2 would have been 5th, and it went Nimmo, Ramos, Gurriel, Reynolds, Steer. Okay, so that's at least where, if you're just looking at WAR last year, that's how the list would have gone out.
Sure.
Yelich isn't on there because he didn't qualify for that particular list.
Yeah. I think Teoscar Hernandez at number 2 and Ian Happ at number 3 and Profar at number 4 are fair. I think Hernandez had a better, if you just look at offense, Hernandez had the best offensive season. He hit more homers than any of the guys on the list. He was worth 3.5 wins, 272, 339, 501 slug. He slugged more better than any other team. Any other player. He had a 134 WRC plus. Profar had a higher WRC plus. He had 139, so it's not that big of a difference. Hernandez had 99 RBIs. He had a great season.
I mean,
for the Dodgers.
Teoscar Hernandez, 33 homers last year, but keep in mind, he's hit 25 or more in 5 of the last 6 seasons. And he's hit 30 or more, something I keep begging the Cubs to have one guy do. He's hit 30 or more in 2 of the last 4 seasons. I mean, he has power that other guys don't have in left field, right? He's consistently the power guy out there. Now, Profar is a guy who was cut by the Rockies in the middle of 23 and now just got a 3-year, $42 million deal to be the Braves left fielder.
Late bloomer.
He was top of the list for WAR. Would you rather have him on that deal in left than Happ on his deal in left for the Cubs?
The reason I
Happ's been more consistent.
Right. The reason I argued Happ over Profar is because of the body of work. Mm-hmm. Happ has been consistently good, serviceable, well above league average as a hitter and defensively over the last 3 years, and Profar. He gave you a great 2024 and earned himself, what, you said it was 3 years, $42 million?
3 years, $42 million, yeah.
Right? So,
Which
sure,
isn't outrageous.
I feel like maybe in 3 years we can look back and be like, yeah, maybe we would have rather had Profar than Happ at this point. But again, we have to figure it. We tried to balance it in body of work here too. And Ian Happ has been consistently solid over the last 3 years, man. And he's played left field. Like, he's consistently played left field. He's won 3 Gold Gloves.
3 straight Gold Gloves.
Right.
It's a low bar because there aren't good left fielders defensively, but he's the guy that's been at the top of the list.
And you said it, like, he led all left fielders in defensive runs saved, though, too. So I know outs above average, he did not. But I think that as far as body of work and consistency, Ian Happ deserves to be above Profar. But you can't put Profar too much lower based off the year that he just had, though, because
it's almost 3A, 3B.
Right, because like I said, I think the top 4 stand out among the rest. Like, Brendan Donovan is more of a utility guy, but he played more games in left field. Brandon Nimmo, like, I was surprised when I looked at his season-ending numbers because, like, when people talk about Brandon Nimmo, I feel like there's more I don't know, support for him. And then I looked at the numbers, I'm like, wow, like, he needs to be lower. And so that's how he landed at 6 for me. And yeah, I think the last 3 or the last 4 after that, Reynolds, Gurriel, Ramos, and Steer, like, they're not that far apart in my opinion.
Brian Reynolds has been good for a long time.
Good hitter, yeah.
Good hitter. And Gurriel didn't have a good season last year, but he can provide you some of that power too. Like I said, I like him. I wouldn't mind him being the Cubs left fielder if you were just simply flopping one guy in and flopping the other guy out. Nimmo was, I don't know what his numbers were in the postseason, but watching the postseason, it sure felt like he was productive.
Yeah. Let me just read you Nimmo's slash line. And then you'll be like, I think you'd be surprised, right?
Okay, yeah, read it to me.
Brandon Nimmo's slash line last year, 224, 327, a 399 slug, a 109 WRC plus. He hit 23 homers, and he driven 90 runs. But I'm like, how did he do?
Happ.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, his career batting average before 2019 was around like 280, and now he completely fell off. Like 60 points is around 224. Like he totally regressed. Still like a 2-WAR season. Yeah. So I mean, like, I think there's a possibility that Nimmo bounces back. I mean, the one guy that I just want to talk about a little bit more is Yelich. Looking at him, seems like he's going to be a DH, not even a left fielder in 2025. I don't know if it's just because of the scars this man has caused Cubs fans that you're just respecting him. But I would probably put him 4th. I would probably slide up everyone else up 1, Teoscar up 1, Happ 1, Profar 1, and then put Yelich 4th.
We didn't know what to do with Yelich because he was the one guy that didn't qualify based on last year as a left fielder. But if he's healthy, and that maybe that is a big if, there's a really good chance he's the left fielder for the Brewers, and they take Churio and put him in center, or Mitchell and right, however that mix goes. With 3 outfielders, that gives them a good outfield. Listen, Yelich was pretty good. There aren't a ton of guys on this list where a team goes into a series and says, we just can't let so-and-so beat us, the left fielder, for instance. Sometimes you play the Brewers and you would say, you don't want Yelich to beat you in this game. I'll give him that. And Hernandez might be that guy, but he's not necessarily that guy on the Dodgers, right?
Mm-hmm. That's because he's on a team full of stars.
He's on a team full of stars. And somebody in the chat, I think it's Matt, was talking about, listen, he's a good player. He's a B-plus player. Talking about Ian Happ. He's not a star. I've never been one to say Ian Happ is a star, but he's on the list of very, very good baseball players.
Yeah. Good
to very good. And that's what we said the Cubs have had. They haven't had Kyle Tucker, the star. They've had some good to very good to nice guys, all mixed in there. Happ's pretty high on that list of the very good ones, though, for the Cubs.
I think, if anything, all this list does is justify the value that Ian Happ has brought to the Cubs. If you just look at teams in the National League, who the Cubs are playing, I know the Cubs are playing every team in baseball now with how the schedule has changed. But, I also think that he's underappreciated at the same time. So I'm not here saying he's a star either. He's definitely a really good player.
Yeah,
though.
B+ is a good grade for him.
Yeah,
it is. But now we're on our list. we've got him as top 3 outfielder in the National League. That's at least a B. Yeah. If he's one of the 3 best in his league at that position, and even if he's not, even if you want to make a different list, I don't know how you could put him below 5,
right,
or 4.
Among qualified left fielders, Ian Happ was second in Fangraphs WAR. Outside, they had Churio. They had Churio at 3.9. But again, like we said, we didn't know if he's going to play left field next season. So, but if you just look at last year's numbers, Ian Happ was the third best the third most valuable left fielder in the National League. And if you take Churio out because you think he's going to play right field next season, then he was the second. But I mean, he's right there in value and everything in terms of with Teoscar Hernandez and some of these other guys. So I think offensively he's not as good as Teoscar Hernandez, but I think maybe as an overall player you can make an argument for him. So it just depends on what do you value more.
I got another question for you. Now, we heard Yelich is healthy, but there were people in Milwaukee when the injury happened last year that were starting to say, is this guy going to play again? Like, back injuries, we know, not easy, right? So we'll see how the whole thing bounces back. But today, right now, if healthy, that's where we put him. I want to just ask you about outfield in general because we're going to do center and then we'll do right field. But I was thinking about Happ, PCA, Tucker, and Seiya. And we've kind of mentioned, like, did they have the best? Have they somehow pieced together the best outfield in the National League? What teams am I missing that have a better 4 for the outfield? Okay, so the Braves have Profar, Harris, Acuna, and then Marcell Ozuna and Jared Kelenic. Okay. That's pretty good. The Dodgers have Teoscar, and then they have Chris Taylor, Tommy Edman, Conforto, Betts. Like, Betts I don't think is going to play outfield this year. Sounds like he's back to the infield, right? So,
I mean, I don't know if that's
the Cubs have one of the better outfields in the National League. There's no question about it.
I mean, even then, you didn't even include Edman, who just signed a $75 million contract. So, I mean, like, they have Edman, Conforto, Hernandez, Ohtani, Betts. I mean, they could make easily the best outfield combination.
Sure.
By far.
I agree.
It's because they're spending the money of a Death Star. I mean, that's why they have all this talent.
No, they're up there. I'm just saying, if I had to put best outfields in baseball, if that were this show, without going through every team in baseball, the Cubs have to be top 5?
I think so. Yeah.
Right? Am I missing a team that just has kind of like Gold Glove, like Happ? If we're saying Happ is top 3, we'll get to PCA. Now PCA is he's the X factor for that outfield, right? Like, for how good they can be. If PCA ends up being, and we'll talk about him a lot tomorrow, if he ends up being that guy, then the addition of Tucker is spectacular because you look at it and say, wow, that's 3 good. And if you're making Seiya your 4th, even though I know defensively he's not very good, that could be 4 really good offensive, and you could have potentially, I don't think any team has a better defensive 3 than Tucker, PCA, and Happ. Because you could have 3 Gold Glovers.
Sure.
Very easily.
Yeah, no, that's a fun conversation to have. Defensively, for sure, I think the Cubs are up there. Offensively, it will all come down to will PCA be better offensively. But, yeah, I mean, the outfield is the clear strength for the Cubs. That's just a fact.
Agreed, and it hasn't always been.
I know.
Right? It hasn't always been. We kind of wondered what was going to go on with it. I wonder in St. Louis, like on this list, we put Brendan Donovan. He was the guy that qualified there last year, and he was he 3.2 on the WAR for?
Yeah, 3.2. He had a 278 batting average, 342 on base, and a 417 slug with a 115 WRC plus.
But like the Brewers, I don't know what they're doing with their – like the Cubs have a pretty – maybe it's because we're in Chicago. They have a pretty clear-cut left, center, right, DH.
And like
the Cardinal, Lars Nootbaar, where are we putting Lars Nootbaar?
I mean, he had
play anywhere.
He had a down year compared to 23.
For sure.
Newbar did. So we went with Donovan, one, because he qualified, two, because I think he's been consistently pretty good over the last couple of years. If Newbar was like he was in 23, would we have put Newbar on here? Well, I don't know, because Newbar might have been playing center or right.
You have often said you're not sure Newbar is an actual person, right? So that's right. Another reason we did not put Newbar on here, because Cody cannot confirm factually whether or not he's an actual human being.
It's just a name that you found in
some video game
in MLB The Show.
By the way, explain this to me, Sean? Maybe do you play the MLB game?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I saw people, Mike Dubs among them, being all excited about something's happening, that it's being released, but not to all platforms. What's everybody all excited about?
I've
never played.
I haven't seen the news, so maybe there's new news. What I have heard from the community is that the frustration with MLB The Show 25 is that they're consistently including PlayStation 4 in the consoles that it's available on, which means they have to make the game worse graphically, because they have to make the same game for the PS5 and PS4. So if they weren't as
It's not on all platforms is what it said.
Okay, so if it's not on all platforms, then that should mean it should be on next gen, which would mean that
it is next gen. Yes, that's it.
Next gen graphics. So it should have updated or the best graphics that a baseball game has had yet.
Because next gen is the best they can have.
Exactly.
Where does this rank?
4 is better than 5, or 5 is better than 4, if or at least greater than 4.
Except in golf.
That's true.
Question about this video game. So is it better than Madden? Is Madden still the standard for football games?
Yeah. Well, so
it just depend on what sport you like playing.
You're talking in like 2006 terms.
If you're playing a sport,
well,
on a video game, which game is the best?
What is the best sport video game?
Yep.
Probably.
I would say 2K.
Yeah.
NBA 2K is probably the most popular. I would take The Show over Madden. Madden hasn't changed in 15 years.
Well, and that's the thing. The issue is 2006, EA and NFL signed an exclusive agreement that makes EA the only person that could put out an NFL licensed video game.
Okay.
That happened with MLB, that happened with 2K, and the issue is now there's no competition, so they can roll out the same game pretty much each and every year.
With updated rosters. And
so, I mean, the last time a sports game has been like great was like 2K11 when Jordan was on the cover.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
Do baseball players get mad about their rankings? I've never heard.
I honestly, I would love to hear Justin Steele's take on his ranking on MLB The Show, because he's a big gamer.
Well, no, I'm curious what PCA is so young that he might really be into what his number is in that. Matthew Gregory's big on it. He says, yeah, MLB The Show is the best. Wasn't Plesac the voice of it for a while? Wasn't he on Plesac on that video game?
Yes, and now it's Boog. Any thoughts on that?
No, I don't.
Boog had a great call in the Iowa State-Arizona game last night. Unrelated.
I was going to take Arizona on that one. I saw that they were like minus 105, and I was like, really? Iowa State? Third in the nation, only 2 losses? Like, I felt like Arizona could have got the upset. But if I had to watch that game into overtime, I probably would have sweated out my soul.
Have you guys ever gone back and played Double Dribble? I think that was on Nintendo. Very solid video game back in the day.
No, Grandpa.
No.
Very solid video game.
So, to close out the show.
Yeah.
I guess, what are some names that maybe you can make an argument deserve to be on there?
Well, we talked about Brandon Marsh, whether it should be Brandon Marsh or Steer. And those were kind of the 2 names we were down to at the end. And Churio, based on, I just think you have to have Churio or Yelich. Could you argue that Yelich and Churio should both be on there? I guess, but we don't live in Milwaukee, so,
Yeah. Well, so the reason that I went back into Notion and swapped Marsh out, or swapped Steer back in for Marsh, is because I texted one of the guys at PHLY and was like, who's playing left field for the Phillies in 2025? And he's like, Max Kepler.
Right.
Which surprised me.
So we left Kepler off.
So I was like, okay. Then I guess we're going to put Steer back on here, because at least we feel like he's going to play left field in 2025. I feel like we did okay here.
I think we did too. We'll be back with another list tomorrow. We'll talk more Cubs baseball. We'll have more fun. We hope you will too on the live YouTube chat. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, 1:30 tomorrow, fly the W.
We all silly like the mayor.